Good evening and welcome to episode 12 of the Author's Outpost. I'm a third of a host, Captain P.F. Dennis.
I'm a partial host, Casmodian.
And I'm the other one, Kendra.
Yeah, you have to forgive me tonight. I've been away, and then I came home and had a bout with After Effects addiction.
Yes.
So I'm a little unprepared tonight. I'm a little groggy.
Poor Paul suffered a wee bout of shore leave.
That's true.
But the good doctor has pulled him through.
Right. Of course, it was in the form of heat, which, wasn't even fun. So, yeah, I had a wedding in Naples. Florida, that is.
Now, I'm trying to remember, did the Zindi wipe that out, or?
I don't know. Because it's all brand new, so it looks like they could have rebuilt it. Yeah, it looks like Disney World or something. All the buildings are,
Just in pastels.
They just don't look like actual structures. They look like facades, And
anyways.
It looks like people go down there to shop and eat, and that's it. And that's pretty much what I did, except for the shopping. Anyway, so we're not going to have a lot of fancy videos like I usually have tonight, but that's all right. It's the unplugged version of the Author's Outpost. We have, I guess I could say we have news this week. I am not big in the forums, but even I heard about some of this nonsense going on. But I'll let Cass tell you.
The more interesting thing is that some fixes to the Earth space dock map went on to Tribble, so hopefully this Thursday we will see those go live, so that things will work right and using it for placing objects and all that good stuff.
Cool, so it will publish.
That was another thing too, is that there were some fixes that are supposed to be coming in as far as the publishing issues that people have. Apparently, what it partly is that large maps, which generally mean either large volume maps or maps that have large numbers of things, the pathing information on the map isn't cooking in all the way while it's publishing, and that's what's causing map publishing to fail. And they've been doing some jiggery-pokery and techno-wizardry, so hopefully those fixes will come in soon too.
Good.
Now, otherwise, on the regular game front, we got a new feature episode this past week. Yay! It's full of Klingon goodness. It actually was a pretty good mission. I finally got a chance to play it last night. And the rewards for it are interesting, since the rewards are actually traits as opposed to items for once. So I haven't actually had a chance to really see if the trait does me any good, but it's a different thing.
I mean, is this a Klingon mission like you have to play with your Klingon character?
No.
Oh, it's just, all right, I see.
We are now part of we are now part of a grand alliance,
right?
And this mission is headed specifically a task force strike by, well, for the lack of better terms, we'll call them the Klingon Section 31.
I was just gonna say that.
Well, they do have their own, intelligence service.
Well, they're not part of the. They're kind of like Tom Paris's Mission Impossible force, just, with turtles on their heads.
I see.
And they're led by mostly one of their greatest heroes.
Well, Maybe I'll
At this
get in
point,
there this week.
I will spoil it a little bit. This house peg is led by Kalis, the Unconquerable.
The clone.
So the clone, yes. So you get to go run around and get into glorious battle with the Emperor of the Klingons.
Nice.
Who really needs to watch Disney's The Incredibles? Because, yeah, monologuing is bad when you're in battle, and also, no capes!
Yes, well, at least Ultron got that right.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
that was good.
yeah.
I really enjoyed
Now,
that, I have to say.
the episode was good. One little aspect of it, though, apparently has caused all sorts of drama. There's... I won't get into all the details of it because it's, well, it's a huge mess, but basically there apparently are lesbians in the Klingon Empire, and people went nuts about this, and it's a big non-issue because it's like 2 minutes at most. Barely, it doesn't have an influence, but people, internet.
I know.
So
I'm wondering
anyways,
why it should
drama.
even matter. You know, this is Star Trek we're talking about, not, you know, the Heritage Foundation. You know?
Which I will say one thing is that it didn't fit the way it was written in. It stuck out, which I think is part of why people noticed it. The whole conversation, like, you don't even know why you're talking to her mate, because she pretty much has nothing to do with anything. And on any mission that I could think of, if you've got somebody saying, oh, well, I don't want to do this mission the way you're telling me, even though you're my commanding officer, because you might put my mate in danger. I'm sorry, you don't do that in a military setting.
Oh, Picard even sent his girlfriend into the fire, remember?
So I just didn't like the way it was written.
Also broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah, but that was after the fire. It wasn't. That's true. That's true.
It to a certain extent, yeah, it just kind of felt shoehorned in there, but I don't know that it's been worth 5 days worth of drama.
Yeah, I mean, this is IDIC people. You know, I don't know what else to say except, you know, because I haven't played it, so.
Well, the bigger thing has been, I guess, the need for IDIC to be applied to all sides, but.
But I mean,
such is life in that.
But such is the nature of this game. Such is the nature of the franchise. I mean, you play Star Trek, you know, expecting it to be, you know, non-inclusive. I mean, every message in the show has been, you know.
It got me thinking about one thing. And it kind of course, cued on to the topic for tonight, which is social commentary.
Yeah. Are we doing... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's all right.
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting, having played it, I'm surprised that more people aren't complaining about the fact that there's an unwinnable battle!
Yeah.
I wasted 2 hours of my life trying to blow up one stupid ship! I still haven't blown it up.
Yeah.
We will figure this out later.
Some of the reason why I'm avoiding this stuff, that's one thing I don't care for, you know, is that long, tedious grind of you know, I haven't even, since Season 10 came out, I haven't even played the first mission yet.
Yeah, Iconian ships are resistant. The big thing is that I'm finding that it actually requires tactics, whereas we're just used to, you know, fire and forget, fire all the things and mash all the buttons, where combating them actually requires you to do certain things in a certain order. And that's just the balance that needs to be struck is, I hate to say it, learning how to play the game. And even I'll admit, I've been button mashing all these years.
Yeah, I have too, but I also have separate things and separate buttons. If I have to, I use a controller. I've programmed everything individually, so if I have to, I should be able to. Only beams and torpedoes, I can do that all separate.
So, yeah, Iconians are fun to fight if you like fighting things.
No, they're not! I like fighting things, but not when they won't die!
Yeah. Yeah, when they're too resistant, it's not fun. Killing just isn't fun.
If it was enough of a challenge to keep me going for an hour, maybe, but 2 hours.
Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted that long.
And that was only on that one battle. The rest of it, I played quite quickly.
I had the trouble with. I was in my Avenger when I was doing that, the Delta mission with the holographic Voth ship, and I was an hour trying to kill that thing, and I complained about that. That was just too much. But I had to go get my Odyssey to finally go and polish the thing off.
Yeah, and see, bear in mind that my primary boat is a cruiser, so I'm used to just getting beat on.
And I have
So my attack.
Well, the Avenger's pretty tough, but in that circumstance, I couldn't make a dent in it, so eventually it was always going to wear me down. But
Yeah,
I don't
Paul,
know why.
you fly in between me and her, and she doesn't have a tough little ship. Escorts are basically the Obreths with big guns.
Yeah, but I have quad cannons, level 14s, and all my weapons are top of the line. I mean, I couldn't make a dent in it. It just didn't make any sense.
I got it down to 73%. I was like, oh, finally! And then the stupid death ray hit me and blew me up, and by the time I respawned, it was back to 91%. And I was like, no!
Yeah, you got to kind of pop those secondary gateways, but when you're also popping the solar gateways. But these are things to learn, things to explore. The Iconian War will rage on, and it will claim many lives, some of them over and over and over.
So maybe I'll give it a try later. Something tells me I'll be turning After Effects back on, though.
No!
Yeah, I have to make up for this week by preparing stuff early for next week. But it'll be easier this time, because now I have all these templates that I've prepared. I just didn't finish them for this week, is all.
Until you decide the template
I thought I
to be
did.
improved.
I thought it. No, they're fine. They're fine. No, originally they would have had to have been done from scratch each time. Like the intro is simple. I just swap out a couple of things and it's done. That one's perfect. I don't like the end title we've been using, so I've been making a new one, but that's not ready yet. And I didn't prepare an old version for this week. And the
Well, we
Take
have a
5
habit
thing,
of forgetting them anyways, so.
the Take 5 thing, I worked like crazy to make the template, and then I didn't make the mix down for the final version. Just, I got hung up with lip syncing and character animation. Anyhow, we have a mission this week that we reviewed, because again, we have no guest. It's a sorry state of affairs. But, in our defense, I was absent. Anyway, we did Leviathan 99's. Yesterday is tomorrow. And I have some footage on that. Raw, as it might be. But it come right out of demo
This is an acoustic
record.
show.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also a video show. Yeah, when you go to YouTube to listen to it, you can, and if you watch it at Twitch, you can see it. Anyhow, I played this mission, and by the first third of it, I had realized I had played it before. I recognized it because it's definitely not a new mission. It's been around for years. I don't even know if Leviathan's around anymore. I haven't seen him in a long time.
He definitely exists in the forums. That is the definite.
He does.
Yes.
Oh, well, maybe we should have gotten a hold of him.
He is a prolific forum poster.
Because we had him on primetime once. Yeah. Oh well.
We can always do a follow-up show.
Yeah, another time.
With 100% more planning.
But it was an interesting mission. It had to do with what are they? What's the name of that ship? The DY 125 or 175, whatever. The
DY 175 sleeper vessel.
Exactly. And you go. Well, first of all, you start on Vulcan, and there's a couple of things going on when you get there. One is that this monk is trying to get his hands on the second stone of Gaul. And there's a Ferengi there who's, who also wants it. And the only way the monk would consider, the only thing he would consider trading it for is the information on the old sleeper ship. So the player goes and finds the sleeper ship at the request of the Vulcans. And they wake everybody up. You wake everybody up. And there's a whole, group of people. You wake up probably, half a dozen of the crew?
5.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you wake up the whole crew, but you interact.
Well, no, I thought
5 really.
Didn't they mention that there was a whole bunch of other people in a lower deck still in stasis?
At least one of them gets woken up because it's the husband of one of the people
right. Yep.
That you interact with him.
Yes. But the captain of the sleeper ship turns out to be a real winner.
Well, the
Abrams or whatever.
The captain himself was actually a fairly nice guy. It was his boss.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The guy who worked for ChronoWorks. That's
right. Which is
the captain
an aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
We find out that this vessel is a remnant of the ChronoWorks Corporation, whom people may remember we saw previously in a Voyager 2-part episode.
Correct. It was the ship was named the Starling after Henry Starling, who was the head of ChronoWorks, who reverse engineered 29th century technology to cause what we now know as the computer age.
And also happened to be part of what got us the holo emitter for the Doctor. Correct.
That's another thing we won't go into now. But yes, I did remember playing this mission before, and I remembered liking it before as well as I did this particular time. I find that if you play a mission more than once, you understand a lot more of it, and you don't miss as much as you do the first time around. And it's a good mission. It's a very good mission. It's got a nice balance of the dialogue. The story is good. There's plenty of combat in it. Although I have to mention this. You know those elite raiders with the electricity gun?
Yeah, I hate Nausicaan Lockdown.
But they were much, much, much easier to wipe out than those rotten Cardassians in digging in the past.
Yes, well.
Yeah, I found that I had no trouble at all wiping those Nausicaans out. sometimes my away team would get rid of them before I was even ready. Like I'd start like activating my my probes and everything and setting mortars, and by the time I was done, they were all dead. I was like, oh, okay.
My personal favorite is in missions where I don't even get out of the load screen and it finally says press any key. I'm just staring at bodies on the floor because stuff still happens during the load screen.
Mm-hmm.
So, important safety tip, ladies and gentlemen. When you set your spawn points for an enemy encounter on a map when you go into it, please make sure that it's far enough away that a combat won't trigger while you're in the middle of loading. Nothing sucks more than loading into a map and finding yourself dead.
Yeah. Or having nothing to do. It's like, you know, your away team is taking care of everything before you even get a chance to hit a button.
Excuse me while I wade through the dead bodies.
Any other thoughts?
Well, see,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I played this mission way back, like when I first got into the Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked it because I had just seen, I think, did I play it right after I saw the ChronoWorks one, or was it right after the Bell Riots one, or was it, I don't know, it's one of the connected episodes. It might have even been after the one with the Stone of Gaul. Is that, am I saying
That's
calling it
Gambit. Yeah, that episode is Gambit. It's a two-parter.
Might have been actually after I watched that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
When Picard died, but not.
Yes, he was undercover.
So I watched one of the related episodes like right before I played it, and you know that wonderful feeling where it's like Star Trek hasn't ended, it continues.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't gotten that feeling very often playing the game, honestly, where I really felt like I was playing a continued episode. Paul, some of yours do that for me, and I've played a couple others that do that, but for the most part, I don't. You know, it's good, but it doesn't feel like it's a Star Trek episode usually. But there's a few out there that have that feeling, and it's like that, goodie! Like that feeling you get when you hear the Star Trek theme song come on, where you're like,
yeah. Yep.
Because I'm sure you two make that noise all the time when you think Star Trek. You just squeal like little girls.
Oh,
if
all
it
the time.
involves Dax, maybe.
Yeah. Well, or 7 of 9, or T'Pol. I love them all. Anyhow, cast, anything?
The episode does a really good job of calling two numerous ones. You have, it's Gambit for the TNG one, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is. Yep, season 7.
You've got callbacks to Gambit. You've got, is it past tense for the ChronoWorks ones?
No, it's future. No, Future's End. No.
Future.
Is it? Yes.
Future's End sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the one with Sarah Silverman in it.
Right.
And Ed Begley.
And then past tense was the DS9.
Correct.
The Bell Rides. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all these calls. There's bits of history involving.
Call back to Space Seed.
Well, Space Seed, not only Space Seed, but also back to the one with Space Lincoln. Because we get Colonel Green.
That's right. You also have Colonel Green in an Enterprise episode, the Paxton. What's his name?
Which that was the
Peter
one.
Weller.
Which is what was probably more the source material, because it was more relevant to the Eastern Coalition and all of that.
Well, that came from First Contact.
Right. All of that post World War III eugenics war history.
Mm-hmm.
That happened back in the 90s.
Yeah,
but
the
not.
1990s. Well, past tense is supposed to be happening just about now.
Right.
10 years from now, I think. Something like
Well,
that.
wasn't it you, Paul, that pointed out that this is Buck Buckeyes
Yes,
Rookie
it is.
season?
It is Buck Buckeyes' rookie year. The London Kings should be a baseball team right now.
Boy, didn't they get that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that. You know, soccer, European football seems to be the only real crossover.
I'm just waiting for baseball to die the death it
Oh,
anyways.
no. Baseball is great. Baseball is history. I love baseball.
But
Watch
yeah,
Ken Burns' documentary. You'll change your mind.
I'll wait for the Ken Burns one on the Cestus Leagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not a hint to you, by the way, Paul.
The Pike City Pioneers.
But yeah, there's plenty of touchstoning, and that's and also it's kind of a commentary on how much civilization, or at least human civilization, has changed since now-ish, going into the 25th century, because crack, the Ferengi,
Yeah.
much like Quark did when they what was Little Green Men,
Yes.
commented on how much different humans of the era were, and how it could almost be sort of like a moment where he could get up and do a speech from like A Few Good Men.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, overall it's one of those, I guess that's one of the ways you can tell that things have changed, because I remember when Nausicaans used to be the most annoying things to kill, and now it's sort of like splat.
Yeah, at least the elite raiders were tough. You got hit with that gun and you were held for quite a while. I think they nerfed that a little bit. I think they had to have.
I would sooner play Dom Judd with them.
Yeah. I don't like them anyway. I mean, we don't have much history on them. The only episode that ever showed them for, other than them just being nasty people, was the Enterprise episode with the freighter.
Right.
You remember that one where they held a Nausicaan hostage? Yeah, that's about the only one where you saw them for any extended period of time. But, I don't know. They're bland because they haven't been fleshed out. That's an idea. Yep.
Yeah, there's a challenge for somebody out there.
Make us care about the Nausicans like someone makes us care about Pakleds?
That's right, and I'm not going to even mention it. I wasn't going to say it again. It'd be like every single show. But, yes.
So I think one of the things that I thought was interesting from a writing perspective about this episode was the log entries that you have to read about the people on the sleeper ship. I thought that was an interesting way of sort of fleshing out all those characters.
Right.
And it kind of made me think of the part in the episode we're going to be talking about, past tense, where the people from the Sanctuary District, when they finally get access to the net, when they're telling their stories, there's actually a nice parallel there.
Well, it also turns out that you need that information.
Right.
In order to get through that force field, you have to go through the little questionnaire.
Which I like that he did that, because otherwise nobody would read it.
Yeah, I like it too. And I have to say this, though, I've gotten in trouble for that. Some people just hate that. I got a review once that said, never quiz a player. Like I broke some etiquette or something.
And that was one aspect that initially I was like, anachronism. Why are there force fields? There shouldn't be force fields. Force field technology wasn't around.
Yeah, but it was a ChronoWorks ship.
But then thinking about like, oh wait, yeah, they would have access to some of that stuff. So, okay, pass.
Yeah, matter of fact, he had superior weaponry to present day.
Right, because it was 29th century stuff. The other thing... What's another thing I was going to say? Aw, I lost it.
I thought you needed a break.
I took it.
Oh, you did. So I was just like slow in seeing the remark. Okay.
That was when you and Thomas were talking earlier.
I'll see. That's how slow I am.
Yeah, when we were introing the episode.
My brain is experiencing some rubber banding tonight.
This will be fixed in a future patch.
Yes. I don't know about that. I think my brain is a game they abandoned. I got no devs up there.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, one thing that I thought was interesting is the way that they discussed the whole Prime Directive thing of non-interference. Which, of course, is always a thing. But you could look at it kind of as, in current day, there's the whole argument about whether the United States should step in when there's genocide happening somewhere in the world. And
well, when there's people there who should be taking care of it themselves, yes.
Well, you have people, though, on opposite sides of it.
Hmm.
You know?
All I mean is, the only difference in, like, the Prime Directive is that the interference is culture changing. It has a huge effect on the culture you're interfering with. I don't know if that's true.
Well, some
case.
people would argue that times that we have stepped in military ways in other countries have drastically affected the economic and social development of a country.
Well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be economic. Consider just the thought of stepping in and bringing a superior level of technology. Imagine if somebody showed up right now in the middle of Africa and handed out a replicator.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
but
that's
in our
what I'm getting
modern
at.
day,
Yeah, see, in the
modern
present day, I don't think anything we have is going to surprise anyone except, the most remote tribes, possibly.
well, not surprised. I'm talking about interfering in military combat
No, I know. That was your
to
original
try and
point. But
prevent the death of civilians. Like stepping in the middle of a civil war.
right,
Because that's
right.
essentially what they were talking about in this mission, is the person from Earth is saying, hey, the Vulcans stood by and did nothing while we were dying and suffering on Earth.
Well, I mean, the Federation wouldn't step in the Klingon Civil War. We had to wait till Romulan involvement was discovered.
Right, so the question is, I mean, the Prime Directive sounds really good, but the point is made in this mission, yeah, basically you're keeping from getting your hands dirty.
It's the higher ground.
Hmm. Well, I guess our Prime Directive was something that came from the Vulcans. An idea that came from them.
Yeah, blame Archer. That's
And
what we can usually
supported
do.
by Archer, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I can see not giving technology that a civilization isn't ready for, but to not help them. If they're not pre-warp yet, oh, you're not smart enough for us yet, so we don't care if you die.
Well, I don't know, because, maybe it's, the point could be made that the natural course of a planet's development will include those things. What if these people were meant to destroy themselves? That's just the way they are.
Of course.
And you have to sit back and see.
Conversely, and this might be a thing to get covered in the Foundry, how would the Preservers' philosophy fit into this? They very specifically did things that would go against the Prime Directive. They rescued endangered species and repopulated them in places where they would be allowed to, well, survive.
Well, I mean, there are races outside the Federation that are not bound by Federation rules, and, you know, wouldn't even dawn on them.
Of course, then they go and get wiped out, but hey, who's counting?
Right.
But I mean, like, if you look at current history and places where we haven't stepped in, and places where we have stepped in, or even like, okay, say look at World War II and how long it took for us to join the conflict.
Well, we joined when we were attacked.
Right.
Well, to be fair, while we weren't actually in combat for the first 2 years, we were totally shoveling stuff to our allies.
Sure, yeah, and we still had pilots over there flying bombing missions before we entered the war.
But
There were personnel and equipment over in Great Britain.
But that's one example. I think
true,
since then, we've become more and more hesitant to become involved.
Rwanda,
Really? Well, yes.
Kosovo.
In Africa, yes, more than anything. And that's something that's strange.
Syria?
That I don't understand. But we've also gone into places that we should never have been. It's just, you know.
And it's probably because the places we've gone into that we are reluctant to do it again.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, yeah, if you look at the Middle East, there are places that we've stepped in and it's like, why? And other places that we haven't stepped in. And
it's like, why?
Well,
Yeah.
now, because of Iraq, a war which we shouldn't have fought, you know, we're hesitant to go in and take care of ISIS because now everybody's saying, you know, we've done enough. We did enough. Let the people in the Middle East solve their problems.
And it's basically the same sort of thing as the Prime Directive that's being argued now. It's not our problem. We're not going to touch it. We'll do more harm than good if we try and do anything.
Well, ISIS right now, they're, from what I understand, they're economically drained. They can't sustain these places that they invade and take over. You know, eventually, if they go the way they're going, they're just going to peter out. I can't, you know. They're losing support.
But what kind of firestorm and World War III style environment are we going to inherit from it all? It could very much end up looking like Earth of 2063.
Yeah. Of course, you know, we fight the virtual war. You know, you sit people behind consoles and they fly drones in.
Well, you make this sound like some sort of Bruce Greenwood movie.
Nah. Well, yes, but we were aware of that long before that movie.
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you look at Iraq and Afghanistan, there was a lot of ground combat because of the terrain and stuff.
But we went in there for a specific reason. That was, you know, chasing after bin Laden originally.
And that's why there's so much PTSD from it, is because there were actually people on the ground. It wasn't just... I mean, they used drones and stuff, but there was a lot more people being...
No, the drones have just been the last, I'd say, 8 years, maybe, where they've really been used, you know. But the entire war in Iraq, I don't know if there was much drone usage there.
Your initial strikes, there were. But it seems like a lot of the... And in Afghanistan, because of the mountains... But all that to say is it's interesting to look at the argument that was made in that mission about being involved versus not being involved, and what are the reasons for being involved versus not being involved, and is it self-righteous to say that not getting involved is actually the better thing to do?
Well, there's a lot of considerations too, I'm sure. The trillions of dollars we spend sustaining these wars. I think people have just had enough. Because, of course, nobody wants their taxes raised. And it's inevitable if you're trying to sustain those kinds of actions.
And not only military, you could also go into humanitarian aid and where humanitarian aid is given versus where it's not.
Yeah, the failure to intervene in some of these African crises really mystifies me. Because it's not like we haven't gone in other places. But, it's a kind of a serious discussion to be having,
Yes, we've gone well.
Yeah.
Well, we were supposed to be talking about social commentary.
And we have made our own, folks.
Yeah. Let's talk about the lesbians. Nah, it's more fun. Anyway, now Leviathan's mission was excellent mission, and like I said, I have played it before. It's yesterday is tomorrow, and I would say I gave it a 5. Well worth playing. Well worth playing.
I give it a definitely play.
Yep.
Don't need any stars. Just go out there, make your own mind up, and enjoy his efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely good, definitely enjoyable. It was actually good enough that I had went back trying to find it, I think a year ago, and I had posted on the forums, I need to know the name of this mission!
All right.
Baz came up with the answer for me.
Well, Baz has all the answers. I think he's working now.
He's gonna listen later, though.
Yeah, he will.
Yes, and probably stab something.
Possibly.
It's his default setting.
Definitely, yeah. All right. Well, we, as I said, I it was an epic fail for my video production this week. So, our Star Trek episode discussion this week is past tense 1 and 2. I believe that was seasons 3, episodes 11 and 12 of Deep Space Nine.
That's what I recall them being.
Yep. And there's a lot there to cover. If you're not completely familiar with it, Cisco, Bashir, Dax, Kira, O'Brien, and Odo are, I guess, on their way to some conference on Earth, or on their way back.
On their way there.
Yeah. And through a transporter mishap and a cloaking device mishap, apparently the Romulan cloaking device left some chronoton particles, I don't know.
And then there was some kind of a little subspace explosion or something.
Well, yeah, and as they transported down to Earth of, 2025, he said? And they were unconscious when they transported, and they were separated. Dax was picked up off the street by Bill Gates, or a Bill Gates-like character.
Not Bill Gates.
Yeah, and Cisco and Bashir end up in the poorhouse, the sanctuary district.
Yep.
They corral homeless people and stick them behind Well, not homeless, jobless.
Well, not just
just
yeah,
economically challenged people.
economically underperforming people who have no quote use quote in
means of-
society.
A means of support.
They put them out of sight, out of mind.
Right. Because the wealthy don't like looking at those disgusting things when they go shopping on the street. And yes, they wind up in the sanctuary district, and it becomes a very serious social commentary from then on. I mean, the people you meet in there, you have the DIMS, which are the mentally challenged people, the mentally ill. They're not being taken care of medically. And there's the ghosts, which are the criminals. And the gimmies, which are the people who, they're, I don't know, what's the best word to describe them? Your average
They want
person.
jobs. They want to better themselves. They're the down and outers.
Mm. But they're all capable.
Yeah.
And they're all forced to live together behind walls in, crummy neighborhoods. This one happened to be in San Francisco, but they were all over the country.
Yes, this was the Angel Sanctuary District.
But anyway, they get into an altercation with these criminals, and the man responsible for
social change.
Yes, was killed by accident, and Cisco had to take his place, Gabriel Bell, because in history, because Cisco, amazingly, he's got that recall. He knows his history. The Bell riots ended the era of the Sanctuary District, caused them to rethink social policies. Anyhow, Cisco has to replace Bell and make sure that the hostages that ghosts have taken in a riot survive.
And that history maintains its normal shape and form.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's historically known that Gabriel Bell dies during this whole thing.
Yeah, I see. Here's the thing that bothered me about that. Now, if at the end of the episode, when the guards let them go, Dick Miller and his buddy there, they say they're going to take ID cards off two dead people and give them to Cisco and Bashir. So how does the history book show that he's Gabriel Bell when he's got the ID of some random dead guy? I don't know, something to think about.
Somebody dropped some plutonium on the records at some point, and
and then Nog sees him in the in the history book later. That
I think that the picture must have been taken when they were talking to the detective. That's my theory.
maybe, yeah, that's a possibility.
Because I was actually thinking about that too.
And of course, meanwhile, during the episode, you have Jadzia discovering all the wonders of 90s internet.
Not even. Yeah, it was like 90s, and it was more like early 90s internet.
And nice fashion, and poor O'Brien and Kira getting to go all through time and space. Well, okay, mostly time. Trying to track everybody down.
Yeah, that was the...
I broke my nose.
Yeah, that was the humorous part of the episode. They had to lighten it up somewhere, because that episode for, the three who were trapped in the past was pretty grim. There wasn't much, wasn't much levity except for Clint Howard, but that's about it.
But then, of course, now Now that we are approaching the time that this was happening, it's interesting to see how things are, because we've had an economic depression. There are a large number of people who have given up looking for work because they can't find work.
Right. And the disparity, the income disparity, is probably worse than it's ever been.
Oh, that was also... Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I was just also reading something recently about the mentally ill in the United States and how so many of them, I forget what the number is, but a very high percentage of our homeless are mentally ill.
Right.
And because of the way the laws are, we can't force them to take medication or receive medical treatment, or it's very hazy.
Yes, and there's a lot of places aren't willing to keep them either. They treat them and they release them right away.
Right.
And there's horror stories about patients showing up in Johnnies in the middle of a street somewhere, bare feet, dropped off by a cab. Happens all the time. They dump these people out on the street.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in Vermont, because of the fact that we have such harsh winters, this is something that I got to see firsthand recently. Because we have such harsh winters, there are programs that will pay for the homeless to stay in hotels all winter. So, on the other end of things, if you want to be put up in a hotel with room service all winter, you just have to prove that you're homeless. And you don't have to do anything about it because they're not going to let you go back on the street when it's 40 below zero.
Well, you must have to be, you just have to prove you're a resident and everything else. I mean, it's, resident.
There's no homeless shelters. That's the problem.
Right.
So the question is, are we on the way towards sanctuary districts? Could we end up turning, say, Detroit into one of those? Just move everybody into...
How about a place
the abandoned inner cities of our large places, and...
Look at Flint, Michigan. Look at all the empty housing there. After the auto industry collapsed there, it's vacant. It's horrible there.
And it's interesting, I just saw an article about building small prefab housing for the homeless, because there's a state that did that, and I can't remember which state it is, but they built neighborhoods for the homeless with these tiny little prefab shacks because it was supposed to be better than them being on the streets. But it's the same sort of, I mean, if you're just putting them in housing in groups together, it doesn't necessarily solve
No,
things.
it's not.
There was a book and movie that came out a few years ago. I think it's called The Soloist. I'm checking right now. But it was about this journalist.
Oh, it was Robert Downey, wasn't it? Oh, no, that was
He was in it.
Was it Robert Downey and who else? I forget. I know
Was
who
it
you're
Christian
talking.
Bale?
No. I'm pulling it up right now. But it's a true story.
Yeah, I remember.
Jamie Foxx, Robert Downey Jr.
Mm-hmm. Jamie Foxx.
And about this homeless man who's mentally ill and attended Juilliard, and he would stand in the tunnels and play the violin. And he ends up finding the guy's family and gets him into an apartment and tells his story, and all these people send him money and a violin, and they're trying to help him start over, but he's mentally ill and he wants to live on the street. Mm-hmm. So even though he's in this apartment, he ends up leaving the apartment and going back to the street. And I've actually seen that happen. I have friends that have gotten involved with trying to help the homeless and have watched them help people get completely set up with housing and a job and everything that they need, and then they just revert back to the life that they know.
Let's see. I hate to use the word comfortable because I'm sure it's not comfortable, but it's what they're comfortable
Familiar.
with. It's, yes, definitely familiar.
Yeah.
And, people, I don't know, it's a strange thing. I know people like that too, that are capable people that just, the desire is not there to live that way. Maybe we think, yeah, you should live in a house, you should have a job, you should, contribute in some way, at least sustain yourself. There are some people who just don't want to live that way. And I know a few of them personally. Just it's hard to help them. It's hard to help them because our version of help may not be their version of help. Everyone's different. But as far as the sanctuary districts go, yes, I could see it happening easily. I mean, I don't expect it to spring up overnight, but I could see us finding ourselves in a place where a situation very close to that.
Basically, it's an attempt at making a situation better and making it worse instead. Because the idea behind the sanctuary districts was supposed to be to provide shelter and food for the homeless temporarily while they got jobs. That was the idea behind the sanctuary districts.
But there weren't any jobs.
Right.
And another thing is,
instead of doing anything about it, they just forget about them.
The way, this country works is anything that's going to be an expenditure for a city or a local government or a federal government, people are going to complain about. People are going to, because they're footing the bill. Taxpayers foot the bill. And, you hear it all the time. People just, the welfare argument. You know how many people just, can't stand it. Cannot stand it.
Welfare is necessary, but there's also the question of what are we doing to help people get beyond welfare?
Right.
Because welfare has essentially become kind of like the sanctuary districts. The way that welfare is set up, once you're on welfare, if you try and do anything to improve yourself, they will punish you. If you get a job working 20 hours a week, which is not enough to pay to feed a family.
No.
You lose your welfare benefits.
Right, but that's another argument entirely. There are so many people now working minimum wage, 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs just to survive because the hourly rate just isn't a livable wage. There's so few jobs with a livable wage. Unless you're a college grad, unless you're fortunate enough to to get a decent job with only, say, a high school diploma, or maybe not even. I have one of those jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky that I can't even tell you, but the jobs don't exist.
Yeah. Or what they do too is, even if you're making a decent wage, they won't let you be full-time, because if you're full-time, then you have to have benefits.
Correct. Yep, you work a 36-hour week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or like, in my case, full-time would be 32 hours, so I work 30.
Right, and there's the money again. They don't want to spend the money.
And it's because a lot of places, smaller businesses, at least, I mean, bigger businesses, it's another story, but smaller businesses, a lot of them can't afford it.
No. And that's how
lose Cast?
No, not at the moment. I'm just letting you.
Well, anything to add?
I wonder if this is the path we're on, and if we need reminders like the Bell riots to make everybody stop and think, is this what we really want?
Well, that was the point of it, I'm sure. Just that,
And it was pointed out in the more utopian era of the season 3. Yeah, that would have been mid-90s.
Yeah. And it's probably more reflective of present day than it was of then. We're economically much better off. But now, with terrible deficits, federal deficits, and it's just, it's in the country divided the way it is. It's it's very possible. It's a plausible future.
That's one of the things that's interesting about science fiction or any sort of futuristic storyline, is how it makes you look at what's currently going on around you. I remember reading a book series a couple years ago, and the book series starts out with basically what was the United States is now owned by China because of our debt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're divided into different social classes based on what your job skills are. And basically families are divided into these groups. And depending on which group you belong to, you have different privileges in society. And it's interesting because it's not really that far-fetched looking at right now.
I can't see, though, any other country coming in and taking charge here. That I doubt that could ever happen. I mean, our military spending, for one.
Well, in the book series, if I remember correctly, it wasn't a military takeover. It was an economic takeover.
Yeah, but how could that happen? I doubt very much we'd allow our country, to be taken over.
If we're completely bankrupt?
No.
As a nation?
I suppose we would have to have that happen, and I don't know if that's a possibility. Maybe if everything failed again and there was no bailout.
Well, that was basically the future it was portraying, is where money came to mean nothing. Our money had no value.
Well, we'll see.
We should best hope that we don't reach that point, because we've seen what happens when a country reaches that point before. This little country called Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, and that little bankrupt country was the one that almost took over.
That little bankrupt country did a lot of things.
Yeah.
That we best not repeat.
Absolutely. So from, abject poverty came might. They certainly weren't walked over. Terrible.
So overall, if you haven't watched this DS9 episode, you should watch this DS9 episode.
Yeah.
Keep it in mind. Share it with your friends. Discuss it in social parties. Mixers.
That's what I was going to say, is that's the problem. Science fiction fans will watch it, but to get that message to a much wider audience is a very difficult thing, because there are a lot of people who just don't see it. You know, I've had people tell me, "Oh, I can't stand Star Trek. It's not real." Okay, yeah, no, I know it's not, but you know,
But the commentary
it's
is
telling
totally
you
real.
something. There's something there. You're missing the point. But you know, it's just not some people's cup of tea, and they wouldn't believe something like that could happen anyway. Silly science fiction show. Could never happen. Could never happen.
But if it makes enough people think, then the people that it makes think, those people can go and they can express it in different ways to other people until the message has been shared in every possible way.
Yeah, in a perfect world. Yeah. Yeah. But the United States being what it is, the capitalist society that we have, the pursuit of wealth is the ideal that will have to collapse in order for any utopian future like Star Trek to take place. And it's the very, well, a lot of people think it's the concept our country was founded on. But, you know, it's too strong. The need and the greed are too strong. At least in present day. Because it's worse than it's ever been. And that's the cause of the income disparity.
But I think it's important that, I don't know, I think sometimes it's very easy to become overwhelmed by the enormity of the problems that we're facing as a nation or even the world. But I think in that, to bring the balance of each person's actions mattering.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a system where a single person, you know, or even a group of people can force those kinds of changes, those huge, enormous changes.
Well, I don't know.
Congress
I disagree.
Our Congress is divided. They get nothing done.
Well, yes. Okay, so the
Nothing.
government is corrupt, yes. But we have the internet, and we have so many tools with social media being the way it is to get a voice out there. And if a voice, one voice connects with another voice, connects with another voice, connects with another voice, eventually it becomes a cry that cannot help but be heard.
You mean like when the Sanctuary District broke into the internets and got their story out?
Mm-hmm. And I think too that, you know, it helps when people who are more high profile start to put a face on things, kind of like in past tense when the guy whose name I can't think of, who was the
Brenner,
when he, you know, said, you know, I'm going to lose my job for this, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I'll get great ratings. He said.
Yeah. Well, what it made me think of is Danielle Steele, who, you know, everybody knows who Danielle Steele is. She's pretty well known. Came out 2 years ago, I think it was, and wrote a book called A Gift of Hope about the homeless in San Francisco. She, for years, 11 years, was working anonymously with a small team to try and help the homeless. Just her and a small team of people trying to do what she could to use her money to help people. And she never wanted to really get any notoriety for it. She wasn't doing it for attention. But after 11 years of it, she felt like she needed to put her voice out there just to try and raise awareness. And the reason she did it is because she actually lost a son to mental illness. He committed suicide at 19, I think. And because of that, that was what originally made her think about other people's children out there on the streets. But, you know, she is a well-known figure, and that book was on the New York Times bestseller list, so that means a lot of people bought it and read it. And how many people fought after they read it? How many people maybe look at things a little bit differently now, and at least might be a little bit more open to the thought of trying to help those who are less fortunate.
Well, I get you, but being open to it and actually doing it, and actually getting it done on a wide scale. I mean, I could say the same thing is true about George Clooney. He talked about Rwanda for years. Nothing was done. We never sent anybody in there. We just sat back and watched. The problem is there's just the enormity of the problems and the way our system is set up. Unless something is changed, presently we don't know. We can't accomplish it. We can't. There's polarization in government where, Republicans refuse to work with Democrats and back and forth, and the hatred that goes on between. It's just at a stalemate. How can anything get done? And, we think, who's going to be elected president, as if that's going to make a huge difference. And it doesn't. It doesn't. A policy there, each president gets a little bit of something he wanted to get done. But nothing, there's never any big, meaningful change at once. Things have to happen so slowly and a little at a time in baby steps.
I guess what I'm saying is grassroots. If doing things on a national level from the government down isn't working, then what about grassroots people doing things as communities?
It has to be made into law for it to mean anything, for it to be enforceable. And the only way to get that done is through our system. And if the system continues to work the way it does, I don't care how many voices you have. If you can't get the people in power to do anything about it, it's not going to get done.
If you can create a program on a community level and prove that it works, your likelihood of getting it made into law and actually getting government funding behind it is much more, it's a much higher chance. If you can prove that here's a system, this is how it's worked on a small scale, this is how we've helped people, this is how we've rehabilitated people and gotten them back to work on a small level, then you can take that example and say, here's something that works.
No, I agree, but translating that small thing into a big thing, that's the big block. That's the bottleneck. It's easy to become cynical when you watch cynical people behave. You learn to expect that kind of behavior, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because the hope is perishable. Anyway, I think that's the theme of this episode anyway, that things had just gotten so bad. And of course we saw the problem and we know what the story was, and we know Bell, caused these the sanctuary districts to eventually close. We don't know when, we don't know how, and we don't know how that translated to bigger change. And that's, we didn't get to see what happened after. We just saw the bad part of it.
But I think that, that was one man that so drastically changed the future that Starfleet wouldn't have existed without his sacrifice.
That's true, but that's fiction. And yeah, I mean, like I said, they can say that this happened, but we don't know how it happened. There would have to be an awful lot of, I don't know, people would have to change a great deal, from the people we're familiar with.
Well, Martin Luther King was one man.
Yes, he was.
There are plenty of examples throughout history where if you take one person and you remove them from the chain of history, things would have ended up completely differently.
Okay, now I'm glad you said that, though, because Martin Luther King, yes, he was an important figure in the fight for African American civil rights, but that was 1965. How drastically have things changed since 1965?
They've changed pretty drastically.
Really, you think there's that racism
I'm not saying,
has
I'm not saying
diminished
racism
in
is
this
dead.
country? No, not by a long
yeah.
shot.
Well,
It's
actually,
just silent now.
Paul, to a certain extent, I can actually say that there is, because I've lived in the South for pretty much most of my life. When my parents first moved down here, my dad was in the Air Force. An interracial couple that was stationed here could request a humanitarian transfer to some other post because they would be ostracized.
Sure.
You couldn't get housing, you couldn't go into restaurants, and this was 1980.
Well, the South in Jim Crow laws, I mean, that's an extreme. That's probably the worst of it.
But
And yes, that's drastically changed.
by 1994, it was just completely different. It was accepted, and nobody batted an eye. Now, sure, you still have your radical elements on both sides that are out to, but by and large, the shift has happened in society. Who knows? 20 years from now, lesbian Klingons will probably be perfectly acceptable.
Yes, of course. I realize that especially down south, things have changed. It's much more visible because it was so bad. But I live in an area where it's never been that bad. At least, not to that degree.
I can think of 2 instances that stand out clearly of racial prejudice that I've witnessed in my life. 2. In 27 years.
Well, I work with a lot of blue-collar men. And from what I hear and what I experience, these attitudes have just not changed a whole lot. The behavior is different, but the attitude is still there.
And I think, this is going to sound bad, but I think a lot of it also depends on age. The age of who you're talking
You'd
about.
be surprised. Depends on your upbringing. That's what I always say anyway.
That's the other thing, too. It does depend a lot on upbringing, but, yeah.
Hatred is taught.
Yeah.
Except where asparagus is concerned.
I like asparagus. Matter of fact,
too.
I bought some at the market a few days ago.
Like
I forgot I should have made that tonight.
Drizzled
Yeah.
in butter.
Well, no, actually, it's great, just braised. A little water in the bottom of a skillet. And so they're not completely mushy. You don't want to get them too soft.
But the butter's important.
Really? I've never put butter on asparagus. Just a little soft.
Oh, you don't know what you're missing out on.
I think it's tasty just the way it is.
They're good grilled, too, though. So good. That
Yeah.
smoky taste.
Yes. See, we get off that subject.
Comment here. This episode brought to you by Amtrak, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, all right. Hey, well, it's about social commentary, right? That was the theme of our show.
Yes.
And I think we've done a lot of it.
We have been commenting.
That's right. We have indeed. But, I think it's Kendra's turn now.
And I'm going to run through this fairly quickly, seeing we've, I think, been going for quite a while here.
Yeah, I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee. Well, I have your book covers up on the screen, and I'm going to go get a refill. I'll be right back.
So, I'm mostly going to be drawing from one article about the aspects of social commentary in fiction. And the summary up at the top says, good social commentary must have a clear and cohesive message. Good social commentary must be well supported within the work. And good social commentary must portray the world and its characters in a realistic fashion. And the author goes on, or the writer of the article goes on to talk about the fact that obviously in science fiction, people could argue that it's not realistic, but realism within the story. It has to make sense within the world of the story. So, clarity and cohesiveness of message. I think that's really important with social commentary because you're trying to make a point and you don't want to go off on so many tangents that people can't follow the point that you're trying to make. You have to keep your message.
If I don't understand you, I'm not going to get it.
Right. Got to keep the message the same from the beginning to the end. Like, this is what we're talking about. Support for the message. That's a really important thing. One of the book covers that Paul put up for me, Unwind. That book is set in a future world, and it's basically talking about what is human life, what makes a person alive, when does life begin, when does life end, what are the rights of an individual human being, what makes a person a person. And they're talking basically about abortion and euthanasia, but they put it in a context that separates it enough from our current circumstance that we can look at it abstractly. But within that book, at the beginning of each chapter, they have something from the news. There'll be a clip from an article or a book or some piece of research. So even though it's fiction and even though it's set in the future, they took things from the past and the present in real life and inserted them within the book to make the argument that they were making and to keep tying it back to actual events that are happening now. So how can we do that in the Foundry? How can we take an issue and explore it? How can we make sure that we root it both in the Star Trek universe but also in our universe so that people know what we're talking about? Do you have any thoughts on that, Cast?
That one, that's always a kind of a slippery slope on it because obviously we also have to fall within the boundaries of the
EULA
licensing. Yeah. The EULA, specifically the terms of service, sort of. Obviously, you can't promote policy, but you can suggest things. You can touchstone stuff, obviously.
And you can disguise it
Which-
as something else.
But probably one of the best is if you can do something like "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield,"
Right.
which is probably one of the best Star Trek episodes about racism that you never really quite get. But it puts just that little thought in the back of your mind about how silly and pointless it is if one person's skin color is different from the other.
Right.
That
Well, that was
they're
the
not a
point they
person.
were making, is how silly it was, because the colors were on different sides. And it
Yeah,
makes us say, well, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But it's really no different. You know? It's just as
So-
silly as, you know, one race
It's
versus
a-
another race.
it's a very fine line that we have to walk, but you can point out a social injustice and use the mirror of an alien race to show something that exists in our society right now.
Well,
You can fighting, well, right now, probably a great example would be you can make a subtle commentary on fighting a number of extant wars in Star Trek Online. We're fighting on a number of fronts. Are those wars fruitful? Will there be a good thing? Now, granted, the further into the story you get, the less that is the truth. But when you first come into the game in 2409, we've been at war for a number of years with the Klingons and that with everybody else.
Yeah, but it always seems to be wars of conquest. Somebody's trying to conquer or destroy the Federation. The wars aren't over issues, you know? And that's how they pretty much homogenize the whole thing.
Well, and it's been just pointed out by PAX, there's this little thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, Paul, the Purity series.
Yes.
I believe it
vaguely
made a social
familiar.
commentary on tolerance and, well, interventionism and a number of those, and didn't throw it in people's face.
True.
And war profiteering.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all inspired by the franchise, I suppose. Almost, if you've been a fan of it as long as I have, your thinking is definitely influenced.
Well, and that's the overall goal, is that if you want somebody to be aware of your thing, you need to put it in a context that people will stop and think about it. Don't throw it in their face, but just make them go, huh. Because that huh is probably the more powerful thing.
Yeah.
This book the one that I was just talking about, Unwind, I have had some of the most interesting conversations with people over it. It is a teen book, but it is extremely well written, and it has kept more than one person that I've recommended it to up all night. I'm just going to read the summary. It takes place in the United States after a civil war somewhere in the near future. The Civil War, which is known as the Second Civil War or the Heartland War, is fought over abortion. A compromise was reached, allowing parents to sign an order that their children, between the ages of 13 and 18, could be unwound, taken to harvest camps, and have their body parts harvested for later use. The reasoning was that since 100% of the child was required to be used, the unwinds did not technically die because their individual body parts lived on. In addition to unwinding, parents who are unable to raise their children to age 13 can stork their children by abandoning them on another family's porch. So the book is told from the perspective of 3 teenagers who are scheduled to be unwound, to become living donors, basically. And part of the procedure is that the reason that they have to be 13 is that they have to be completely conscious while they're being taken apart, so that they never technically die. And there are a lot of different issues that are touched on in the book. They talk about organ donors. There's a whole controversy about organ donors and the fact that an organ donor cannot be completely dead. they are still alive on some level, and scientists are a little bit sketchy on exactly where the line is between life and death. So there's a lot of controversy there. There was actually an article in Discover magazine, I believe it was, a couple years ago about that, and whether some organ donors are actually still viably alive. And they also talk about abortion and partial birth abortion, but they're not talking about it in the context of modern day. They're taking the issues and talking about them in the future. And they also talk about, the issues that are generally used as a pro-choice argument. Unwanted children and issues why the mother might not be able to carry to term, and they take it out of the context of modern day and argue each of the points from a futuristic perspective, so you can separate yourself just enough, but the writing is compelling enough that you're still invested in the story and the characters. So that was one of the books. And the other book, The Cure, is actually talking about people that are different. It's about being diverse. And it's in a futuristic society where everything has been brought to a level of sameness, where everyone is supposed to be exactly the same. And choices are basically eliminated or narrowed down to very few options. And the main character in the story is different. And to punish him for his deviance, they send him back to the Middle Ages as a Jew and make him live part of the life of this person in this, basically sort of like the idea of the holodeck. He experiences this kid's life. And it's supposed to make him not want to be different, and it has the opposite effect. But the story is about how we as human beings tend to persecute those that are different, and why that is, and why there's actually value in diversity. But both of them are from a futuristic perspective, looking back at present time and also at history.
It's funny though, because sometimes you want to say, are we still at a point where this stuff has to be explained? But apparently we are. Although I can't imagine that ever happening. I think as a society, all people are different. Even if they run in the same circles, there's difference between everyone. I can't imagine a culture ever being all the same. I can't imagine that.
Well, I mean, I think that in some ways we're already trying to do that, though, to homogenize culture in such a way that we lose our individuality.
Well, I mean, apart from the melting pot we live in, I mean, I don't know if...
No, I mean...
If it's because everything...
Correctness.
Well...
Like, I've worked with preschools, and state-sanctioned preschools are no longer allowed to acknowledge holidays. Any holiday.
No, I get it.
Halloween is not allowed to be acknowledged. Easter is not allowed to be acknowledged. Thanksgiving is not allowed to be acknowledged. Which I can understand on one level.
But that's...
When
all of... Oh, go ahead.
When I was in preschool, what they did was they didn't just teach, our traditional holidays, but they also taught other cultures' holidays. And they used it as a way of teaching history and also teaching diversity. And that was the thing. You got to learn about other cultures and other people and other places through something as simple as holidays. And now all of that is being removed so that we all become generic and lose our flavor.
Well, I don't know if it's exactly that. I was going to say that it's because of diversity that they do that. They don't want to offend any one particular group.
So celebrate the differences. Don't
Oh no,
hide them.
I agree, but I'm saying the intent of it is not to make everyone the same, but to not be offensive. We're so politically correct today that, you know, people just get offended by every little tiny thing. And I don't know, we're breeding people with a very thin skin.
I mean,
And
here's
it's
my
just too much. It's too
here's
much.
my argument. Okay, put in as many Klingon lesbians as you want, but let me put something faith-based in. And don't get mad at me for it.
Well, I see. Here's the thing that I have a problem with. We're in this science fiction franchise. We know what it is already going in, and that is not atypical of something Star Trek would do. It's just not.
Right, but
And-
I'm not even arguing that. I'm saying, okay, let's be diverse. Let's all express our different beliefs. But let's not pick one belief and persecute everyone else for believing something different.
Sure, that's right. Right. But what's happening? You know, they're getting a lot of nonsense over having them there in the first place.
But it's going both ways, too. I mean, if somebody wants to express and say, you know, I personally thought that it didn't align with my belief system. Okay, they said that. Let's not persecute that person or persecute the person that's saying, I'm really glad this is in here. As long as both sides are respectful, which obviously they haven't been. I feel like people should be allowed to state their opinions in a respectful way without anyone being crucified.
Well, I don't know. I think whether or not people agree with it, it is what it is. You know, not the world is not fair and balanced, unfortunately. But any attitude that fosters hatred, segregation, is a negative thing, whether it be politics or religion or anything. Anything that singles people out to be less than or an object of derision is a negative thing. You know?
Well, that's humanity.
It is. It is. But that's another thing that I'm saying is that humanity is the way it is. So to pretend that nobody's ever going to be offended, that we can sustain a society that never upsets anyone in any way is a ridiculous thing.
Right.
I think political correctness it's gone way over the top. It's gone way over the top. You cannot say anything anymore about anything without somebody either taking it the wrong way or taking it the right way, but reacting in a way that's, overreacting. People have to develop a thicker skin, is all.
But I mean, I guess I can see a world happening where people are forced to be the same. If they made it so that it is criminal to not be politically correct, yeah, we could have a society like that. Somebody offends someone and they disappear.
Yeah, but our First Amendment,
that's getting trampled all over all the time.
It doesn't.
More and more and more.
We can pretty much say what we want. without repercussion. Well, without federal repercussion.
Yeah, but as
You
far
you
as
could get beat up by somebody who doesn't like what you say. But,
right,
you know.
and on a social and economic level, you can definitely be persecuted for what you say. For saying what you believe, you can totally be persecuted on a social and economic level, and your avenues for trying to seek justice are very limited.
Well, I suppose it depends what it is. You know, if your view is that you think you should be able to murder people, well, then I say too bad. You know?
I'm talking about being able to state your opinion on something.
Well, you can state your opinion on something, and why, and what makes you say that, you know, there are repercussions over it. It's what our country was built on. Well, yeah, they can...
Very easily.
That's true. That's true.
And they
But I
can
don't
be
know.
ostracized socially and basically blacklisted.
Yeah. Yeah, like gay people.
Or here in Vermont, it would be, you know, if someone doesn't agree with gay marriage and they come out and say it, if they're a business person, their business will be killed.
Well, I can't speak to that, because I think that's a narrow view.
We just need to appeal to the better nature of people to just think about what they're doing or saying.
Right. I think the better nature is to think that everybody should be treated the same.
That's what Star Trek was always
Yeah.
meaning to do. Appeal to the better nature of us and make us stop and think, go, are we really doing the best thing?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think are we done? We have to, because it's like 6 minutes to 10. We got like a 2-hour show tonight.
Yeah, I think we talked about everything.
Yeah. Some interesting points, though, I must say. You know, hey, kind of a show would it be without it? Anyway, I'm going to throw up the addresses. Our website is www.theauthorsoutpost.com, which is something I have to get to. Hopefully we can figure out what we're going to be doing next week so I can have some time to get that up on the website. We can be contacted at mailbag@theauthorsoutpost.com. Our Twitter handle is @authorsoutpost, and through irc.geekshed.net we have an IRC chat room at #AuthorsOutpost. All right, I guess we're going to say good night for June 2nd. We'll see you on my birthday on the 9th.
Woot!
So, good night.
Good night.
And good fight.